Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
They came into this hall only to walk out.
Place order in the hall.
An exodus of UN delegates designed to send a message that much of the world does not want to listen to Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu's response: we will be heard everywhere.
Thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried. They're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms. Let my people go. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. Unimaginable.
Israel had not just seized control of Palestinian phones, but installed loudspeakers on the Gazan border, where Netanyahu's voice echoing across these empty fields belied his claimed motive that the hostages themselves might hear.
We will not falter and we will not rest until we bring all of you home.
In a week that saw Israel isolated amid so many calls for Palestinian statehood, Netanyahu came well prepared for protest and hostility, armed with props and devices.
It's a QR code.
Buffered by the persistent collapse of his Israeli delegation, his central message: put yourselves in our shoes.
Giving the Palestinians a state 1 mile from Jerusalem after October 7th is like giving Al-Qaeda a state 1 mile from New York City after September 11th. This is sheer madness. It's insane, and we won't do it. The leaders who recognize the Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians, it's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off.
But what of Israel's aggression, being protested not just by delegates but on the streets outside this UN speech? Netanyahu denied it all. A UN Commission report concluded that after more than 65,000 deaths, half women and children, this is genocide. Netanyahu said they were wrong on reports of blocked aid, starvation and famine. Not us, he declared. Instead, it was all Hamas and anti-Semitism. But in nearby Brooklyn, Jewish New Yorkers celebrating Rosh Hashanah this week had a different take.
There are tens of thousands of Jews who are working on this because it is what's morally right, who are working for a ceasefire because they care about Palestinian lives. And this isn't a Jewish versus Muslim or Palestinian fight. It is a nationalist and imperialist battle. It's not a war, it's a genocide.
This is a Jewish community you're here with.
Yes.
How many of your friends feel the same?
Pretty much all of my friends, I would say, feel the same. Pretty much all of the Jewish community that I've made here in New York feels the same. When I go back to my parents' shul, not everyone feels the same there, and we have conversations, we have disagreements and that sort of thing.
Back at the UN, there was chatter on the sidelines about the news that the US could propose former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair to lead a transitional authority in Gaza. Donald Trump was sounding hopeful.
And it's looking like we have a deal on Gaza. And we'll let you know.
Mr. President.
I think it's a deal that will get the hostages back. It's going to be a deal that will end the war. It's going to be a deal it's going to be peace.
Is there really room for optimism? Despite a week of pressure on Israel, its Prime Minister turned up with a furious swipe at his critics and sounding like he trusted no one to make a deal.
In Gaza itself, the Israeli military is continuing to flatten parts of Gaza City in a ground offensive which has forced tens of thousands of Palestinians to flee their homes again, while officials in Gaza say that dozens more people were killed by Israeli fire. And a warning, there are distressing images in Harry Fawcett's report.
After the airstrike's sudden violence, A sense of muted shock on this street in western Gaza City. A four-story building struck, collapsing its upper floors. From the building opposite, across the road, a desperate call for help. Young brothers saying their mother is trapped, still alive. Rescuers bring a woman down. Thank God for your safety, they say. Get her closer to the ambulance. One of the boys, calling for his brother and his father, was standing on the stairs when the missile came down. Stones rained down on us, he says. My mother fell and we didn't know what to do. My father's missing. Hours later and thousands of miles away, Benjamin Netanyahu would tell the United Nations that 700,000 people had followed Israeli orders to leave Gaza City. That such concern for civilian life was itself proof that Israel had no genocidal intent. But the city's population was estimated at 1 million before this incursion. For those who can't afford to leave or say death is better than displacement, this is what Israel's massive renewed campaign is bringing. Netanyahu also talked of finishing the job as fast as possible. But Israel's army chief, who reportedly resisted this ground invasion for its dangers to Israeli hostages and soldiers, has spoken of a grinding, months-long campaign. Netanyahu had promised to put his speech forcibly on phones in Gaza, but no need. People here watching anyway, if unimpressed with what they heard.
I was watching, hoping for a word here or there that things would ease and a solution would emerge, or even the slightest glimmer of hope from the negotiations. But I became frustrated. He insists the war must continue.
And continue it does. Among those killed in a strike on a bakery in Gaza City's Al-Shati camp, 2 9-year-old children.
This area was full of people. There was a bus station here, and they said it was a safe zone. That's why we stayed and didn't go south. We're exhausted, so exhausted.
For the survivors of this strike, more exhausting days to come. Another family newly homeless. It's something you only see once in a lifetime, he says. By God's grace, we're still alive. But how to live now and where? A question asked throughout this ruined place.
And Anushka is with me now. We've had quite a week, haven't we? What happens now?
Well, what happens is that Benjamin Netanyahu leaves here. He goes to Washington, D.C. On Monday, he will meet with Donald Trump. He did hold back on one point today, not calling for the annexation of the West Bank, although people say he may raise that with Trump on Monday. As for these possible deals, the US want this Tony Blair-led idea, an international administration, in line with what happened in Kosovo, for example. But Tony Blair, who is not denying this, is a controversial figure in the Middle East, not least because of the Iraq war. He says he won't support anything that displaces Gazan people. The French and the Saudis had a different plan earlier this week, the New York Declaration, in which the Palestinian Authority would lead an administration. But it is worth saying that in there, Netanyahu called the PA corrupt and said that they paid people to kill Jews. So you can see problems potentially with both of these ideas.
And as clear as mud. Anushka, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to the Israeli government spokesman, David Mensa, and I started by asking him whether it was down to Israel's unprecedented isolation that delegates walked out during Benjamin Netanyahu's speech.
Not at all. I think you saw today the Prime Minister representing his people with pride in a way which almost no other person in Israel can do. And on the issue of people leaving, well, look, who walked out? It was Iran that locks up their own opposition. They don't like to hear from a democracy. It was Turkey, which also lock up their own opposition and then give a mouthpiece to Hamas. So those guys walked out, it's true, but still we believe that our message was heard today, a powerful message that Israel wants this war to be over when our hostages are home and when Hamas lay down their arms.
But you are getting more and more isolated, not just here, but across the board. So you've got, international sporting events cancelling Israel, the Eurovision Song Contest possibly cancelling Israel. You've got your best friends in Europe recognising the state of Palestine. And perhaps most importantly, your best friend in the world, Donald Trump, saying about any plans to annex the West Bank, it's not going to happen. And I wonder whether you regret especially the attack on Qatar the other day to take out the Hamas office there, because the Americans were very upset by that.
Israel has never had a friend like Donald Trump in the White House.
But he's also said very clearly you cannot annex the West Bank, and we know that that plan, was being discussed in the Israeli cabinet. So he set down a red line. Are you prepared to cross that red line?
Look, our Prime Minister has said very, very clearly that this is a subject will be discussed in Israel after our return from the US.
65,000 dead in Gaza, many of them women and children. The wholesale destruction of the Gaza Strip, which has now been rendered into an unviable, economic or social unit. I mean, what is the policy there?
So, Matt, I'm a little bit surprised that you, an experienced journalist, a grandee of British journalism, quoting to me the figures of a terrorist organization. You wouldn't take Al-Qaeda's name for it.
This is the Palestinian Authority.
Yes, you wouldn't take
these numbers. These numbers have not been disputed by the international community.
No, well,
and all you have to see is the
these
levels
figures
of
are
destruction.
false. They are Hamas figures.
Well, why don't you let us, David Nixon, why don't you let us go in and report
hundreds
ourselves?
Of journalists
you won't
have
let
been
us in.
Hundreds of international journalists have been into Israel.
With
hundreds.
the IDF on very controlled
and that's
emirates.
right.
How many hostages, Israeli hostages, have been killed inadvertently by Israeli bombardments?
So that's a.
Do you have a number there?
That's a tragic. That's when that has happened. In friendly fire incidents, that has been a tragic occurrence.
How often?
But please don't blame the victim, the hostages themselves. It's not Israel that took them hostage. Hamas took them hostage. The terrorists.
We listen to the hostage families.
Of course we listen to the hostage
They're
families.
furious with your government.
They were in the hall today. Those hostage families were in the hall today, and they applauded the Prime Minister.
Well, not all of them.
Because
not the ones
they
on the
know,
streets in Tel Aviv.
because they know that the Prime Minister and this government and all of our people, for the hostages, this is an open sore in Israeli society. But Hamas are holding them, not Israel. Hamas are holding them.
On the streets
Some
of Tel Aviv.
hostage families.
Some
hostage families.
Furious with you because they think you're sacrificing their children, their loved ones,
God forbid.
for the sake of a perpetual war.
God forbid. It's not a perpetual war.
Tony Blair's been mentioned in dispatches as a possible leader of some kind of interim body. Is that a runner? Is that going to happen? Do you know about this?
Of course, we've seen the reports as everyone else has. I can share with you that the Prime Minister has met with Tony Blair. And I haven't got anything more to share with you, but I can tell you that Tony Blair does have an understanding of the region.
Just one final one briefly. I mean, this body here, the United Nations, and hundreds of legal experts have come to the conclusion that what you're doing in the Gaza Strip is an act of genocide. What is your reaction to that? Does it make you feel shame? Does it make you reflect on what's been going on? Or do you just think, well, the international community is lying?
Matt, I'll tell you how I feel as a representative and a spokesman of Israel's government. I feel pride.
Pride?
I feel honor.
Pride in genocide?
I feel honor that I get to represent the homeland, the only homeland of the Jewish people on this earth. And on the charge of genocide, it is a false claim. It is completely unfounded. You throw at me 100 experts, I can throw at you another 300 experts that say precisely the opposite.
David Mensa, thank you very much indeed.
Good to be with you, thank you.
And you can watch the full version of that interview later on our YouTube channel. Now, while we've been on air, Médecins Sans Frontières, a key medical NGO that operates inside Gaza, has said that they've been forced to suspend their activities and leave Gaza City, that their clinics are encircled by the IDF. Joining me now on the line from Johannesburg is Mustafa Barghouti, who heads up the Palestinian National Initiative Party. Mustafa Barghouti, good to have you back on the program. I just want to start with your reflection on this week. It started off with a number of countries that are friendly with Israel recognizing a Palestinian state. It ended with 50 nations, perhaps a little bit more, walking out of the speech given by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Do you think that global diplomatic opinion is shifting in your direction?
Absolutely and totally. And before I answer your question, let me add to the information you've just mentioned that the Israeli airplanes have attacked and destroyed 4 of our major clinics in Gaza City. They destroyed them completely by shooting them with rockets. That tells you what's happening in Gaza. Yes, I think Israel has never been so isolated as it is today. I think the only similar example in modern history is the isolation of the apartheid system in South Africa. And I think that Netanyahu and even the spokesperson of the Israeli government, both of them are distancing themselves from reality when they don't want to see that. But one thing that Netanyahu said today in the United Nations, and I think that will help us make the world even more understand us, which is that he said that 90% of Israelis oppose a Palestinian state. And 90% of the Israelis support the continuation of this terrible genocidal war in Gaza. That by itself is an indication of who is the problem here and who has been an obstacle to the possibility of peace. One more thing is that I think Netanyahu lied a lot today, especially about the victims of this terrible war. I think it's an Israeli research institute with British institute that both came with the conclusion that 5 out of 6 people killed in Gaza of the 165 of the 65,000
We've got a few more
are civilians.
Okay. Right. A couple of more questions and not much time, I'm afraid. I am slightly confused, and I wonder whether you are, about which particular plan might actually have some traction for the post-war Gaza future. There's the French Arab plan, which involves the Palestinian Authority. There's this other plan that might involve Tony Blair that doesn't involve the PA. How do you see the situation?
I think you can keep Tony Blair for Britain. We don't need him. And we don't need any foreign body or any foreign person to rule our lives because we are quite capable of doing that. But what we need is democratic free elections, which should happen after the war. But mind you, I am so worried about the fact that everybody is talking about post-war plans now without stopping the war. And I think this is in a way a certain distraction from the reality of the genocidal war that is happening now in Gaza City, from the fact that Israel is at the moment, while we talk, is destroying a very important historical city in the Middle East, which is Gaza City. And they are also forcing already 1.1 million people to be ethnically cleansed from their homes, and every home is being destroyed. That is the reality of what's happening now. And I think all the attention must be directed now at imposing sanctions on Israel to stop this terrible war of genocide. After the war, we can solve our problems by our own selves. And we have had a very good agreement in which would allow a government, a unified government for both West Bank and Gaza.